My first video on YouTube got 83,000 views. It was insanely simple and definitely wasn't deserving of 83,000 views. The reason it got so many views, even though I didn't put much work into the video, is probably because it's so hard to find good advice on YouTube. Since I didn't go over much in that video, I figured I should make a video like this one where I actually go more in depth and show you how to do animations properly. Starting things off, let's recap everything we learned. Depending on which animation you're doing, every single animation should have a different curve. For something coming onto the screen, use an entry curve that should be in the shape of this. For something moving across the screen, do an intermediate curve, which should look something like this one. And for something leaving the screen, you should get the point. It's an exit curve. It looks like this. Now that I've gone over everything with editing, let's go into some more depth. Now that we're done with the recap, there's no better way for me to show you how to be more advanced than to replicate an effect I usually do. So I'm going to be showing you exactly how I recreate this effect you're seeing on the screen now. If you're not into Minecraft editing, don't worry, you can still learn how to make nice animations in Premiere Pro using this advice. I've also released the project file and assets for this edit in the Editor Accelerator community. You can go check it out with the link in the description. It's completely free. Now, starting off editing the animation, the first thing we're going to do is start by setting up the scene. Depending on what kind of animation you're doing, the scene needs to be appropriate for it. So if it's something really sad, maybe have something gray or dark bluish, something to indicate sadness. But don't stress about the color too much because that won't make too much of a difference. The second thing you want to do is incorporate anything that can make it feel more real. So to start things off, I'm adding a blue background into my project, and usually we want to add something on top of this to make it feel more immersive and real. So in my case, I added speed lines. It can honestly be anything, but this is what works for my scene. I blended the two together and it looked something like this. Now, getting started with the actual animation, we need to add some realism to make the PNG feel more alive. I've gone over this, but we're just going to add a nice and simple drop shadow to it. Now that we've added the drop shadow, we're going to actually animate it onto the screen. So head into your effects, drag a transform effect, add motion blur, and then animate it. Then once you're up to the curve part, make sure it's in this shape. Since the speed lines give it a fast-paced vibe, I'm going to make the animation come on super fast, since it'll just match it all. It'll look something like this. I feel like it's sliding onto the screen is a little bit too bland, so I'm going to add a little bit of a warp zoom onto it. This part isn't necessary, but if you have the Sapphire plugin, it can make it look a lot nicer. I'm going to add the Sapphire warp transform effect and change the dimensions of the shift X and Y just a little. And I'm just going to keyframe it to go back to normal once it gets on the screen. It's a subtle effect, but it makes a really nice difference. And when it pops up, it looks like this. Now we're going to get into the crafting table animation. For this, I'm going to need some diamond and diamond block assets. So I just head over to Google and download some PNGs of that. Then I just added drop shadow and nested the diamond ore. After that, I joined the crafting table and the diamond ore together in a nest to make it one whole animation. Then we're going to get back into the transform effect and start animating these diamonds to pop into the screen using the scale. Using an entry curve, I fit all the diamonds in all 9 boxes, and then I delayed the frames by about 2 or 3 just to make it a bit more interesting. Once I did that, I just added some finishing touches with this hollow square behind the diamond to make it feel more alive popping in. After that, it looked like this, which in my opinion looks really good. Next, we need the actual diamond block to pop up, and I don't want to make it generic like all the other diamond ores, since it is a bit more special. So if you have Sapphire, you can do this, but if not, don't worry. I added a Sapphire raise onto it. This just makes it stand out a little bit more and make it more interesting. And instead of having a generic Popin, I added the Popin with a little swivel. To create the swivel, you can just go to the basic 3D effect, keyframe the swivel to -180 degrees, and then add an entry curve to it. Then that looks something like this. And to add the finishing touches, once I had that all done in the nest, I head back to the main project and add a handheld shake to the whole nest. So instead of it just sitting in the middle of the scene, it moves a little bit to make it feel more active and alive, which also goes with the speed lines. Create a handheld shake. If you have the Sapphire Shake plugin, you can use this. Apply it onto your image, turn motion blur on, and then change the frequency to 1 and the amplitude to 0.1. Now we're completely done the animation, and hopefully you following that and watching me create an animation like that helped you with your animations. Here is the final product. I hope you enjoyed this shorter tutorial, and I hope you learned a thing or two.